what sort of messed up, cynical name is it, Planned Parenthood? Because there's no planning and there's no parenthood. Yeah, I'm planning to become a parent. Okay, let's start with killing your baby. By the time you leave the clinic, there's no parenthood. It's like I am planning my visit to Australia and I start by shredding my tickets to Australia.
I am joined today by Nicholas De Santo. Now, I don't know if you remember, not fairly recently, I just put up a video. I was going through a comedy bit done in London. It was mostly a pro-life comedy show, or comedy sketch, should we say, by this comic. And it was really funny. I was going through some of the bits of it and just sort of talking about it. And I've actually got the comedian with me today, Nicholas De Santo. So thank you very much, Nicholas, for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Wojciech.
So, Nicholas, I'm going to ask you to start off, and your answer here is not dependent on me continuing this interview or anything like that. Are you a Catholic yourself? Because you mentioned in that bit that I was watching, you went to a Catholic school, you're Catholic educated. Are you Catholic yourself or not?
Well, I'm not officially or technically Catholic because I was never baptized, but I was born and partially raised in Italy. So I've been familiar with the religion and have sympathies for Christianity and Catholicism.
Okay.
I've baptized both my children, by the way.
Oh, great. Well, so you said you were partially raised in Italy. So were you born in Italy or were you born elsewhere?
I was born in Italy, but my father was from Iran. He was a diplomat, and that's why he was working in Italy at that time. So yeah, I spent part of my childhood in Italy, but I also lived a bit in Iran. Then I returned to Italy and spent a year in Germany, and then moved to England about 13 years ago.
Okay, so you moved to England 13 years ago. Now, is that when you started to sort of try out your stand-up comedy and get into that, or did you already start that earlier on, maybe when you were in Italy or somewhere else?
No, I started in England about 4 or 5 years ago. It was something I always liked as a viewer, as a consumer of comedy, but then I tried to give it a go and started it as a hobby. It's still not my only job or my main job. It's something I do on the side, but thanks to the video you mentioned, it's getting bigger and bigger. I'm starting to get more attention, so hopefully it will grow to the next level. But yes, I started in London. As you know, it's a big pole for comedy enthusiasts, stand-up comedy, maybe together with New York. These are the two major epicenters of stand-up. So yeah, that's when I started, about in 2017, I'd say.
Okay. And when you were just starting out, because I know that when you start doing stand-up comedy, you kind of start with open mics and things like that, and you're just trying to get on stage and have some time, maybe a few minutes to try a set and things like that. Did you immediately go for this kind of right-leaning, more conservative comedy, or did you just start off trying to just find things that you thought would make people laugh and see if you can just do that, or did you go straight for it? No, this is the kind of thing you want to talk about. You're just going to start with that straight away.
Well, I didn't go immediately for it, although I did go for right-wing comedy from even starting in the course, in the stand-up comedy course we were doing as newbies. In fact, if people check my YouTube channel, I have the very first stand-up routine that I performed at the end of the course, and even in that one, I introduced myself as a right-wing comedian. Now, of course, living in London, a big metropolitan city, which is very much left-leaning, you are aware of that, I imagine. It's not very easy, and it's not always very useful or constructive, because at the end of the day, you are performing to an audience, so you need to market yourself, and you need to keep the audience happy. Politics, whether it's left or right, even left-wing politics, is not always the best solution or the best avenue for a comedy event, because it might be a birthday party, it might be a corporate event, it might be a stag do, or it just might be people on dates, and these are very heavy topics, right? And potentially controversial. People feel strongly about it. Promoters might be a bit uneasy. So I was trying to, maybe find a good mix. You can't just go and do politics, whether it is left or right. And of course, what I said is true for left and right, but you will find that in places like London, promoters and the audiences are more lenient and more forgiving of people who do left-wing comedy, because it aligns with their political belief. So yeah, initially I tried to have a mix of different topics or subject areas, but gradually, as I was trying to find a voice, as they say in the comedy world, I felt that this is something which is missing. On the one hand, comedy has to be coming from a true place. It has to be, you have to present your authentic self to create that sort of rapport or relationship with the audiences, so that they see that you are genuine and authentic. So, and I have right-leaning or right-wing sympathies or beliefs or a worldview. So that was the way to go. And on the other hand, as I said, almost nobody was doing this, and almost nobody is doing this. I joke about it. I say I'm the only one. So it makes me very much more memorable, and it helps me stand up and stand out, which is crucial for somebody who's starting. Because at the end of the day, you want people to remember you when they come to a show and they see 10 different comics. A lot of times they come to me and say, you know what, we never saw anybody do anything like this, and you're the only one. The rest of the people, when they do politics, is usually the same left-leaning talking points and positions.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope that answered your question.
And I know that you do say in your comedy that you're the funniest right-wing comedian in the world, and the only right-wing comedian in the world. That makes you the funniest.
In the UK, in the UK.
Okay, yeah, and that's probably not too far from.
But it's obviously it's a joke, and
yeah,
funny story about that. Sometimes promoters don't like what you say on stage, and they ban you, and they come up with different excuses. Some of them are more honest. They say, you know what, this is not what we want, and fair enough. But sometimes they're like, it's not that I have a problem with right-wing or conservatives, but what you said was not true. It wasn't accurate. Like you said, you were the only right-wing comedian in the United Kingdom. But you know what? There's also Andrew Lawrence. There's also Leo Kearse. So you were not accurate. I said, the joke is still valid. So you're saying there's 3 of us in the whole kingdom? When it's called an act, isn't it? So when people go on stage and they say, Milton Jones, he goes on stage and he talks about his various grandfathers. At the end of the show, you think, how many grandfathers did he have? Like 4 or 5? Of course you don't have to be accurate, because it's a joke, and it's called the comedy act. But it was funny when I said, I'm the only one, and this promoter was like, no, there's also Leo Kearse and Andrew Lawrence, so you can't say that.
That's interesting. Yeah, he took it very literally then, what you were saying.
Yeah.
Have you had gigs, particularly maybe when you were starting, where you felt that the audience wasn't reacting so well because they didn't like the topics that you were covering, the kind of ideological viewpoint you had, or did you find a way to make what you were saying funny, and therefore it didn't matter where you did it, as long as it was funny, people reacted well? Did you have any issue with trying to do that kind of material, and did you find people reacting badly to it? Maybe not because it wasn't funny, but just because they just didn't like what you were saying.
It's a very good question, because as a comedian, ultimately this is a very democratic form of art or craft. It's debatable whether it's art or just a craft, but the reaction is immediate. The verdict of the audience is immediate. It's not like a painter who has no success, and then maybe after his death, decades later or centuries later, people realize the true value and becomes, super famous and respectable. At the end of the day, people immediately, by laughing or not laughing, they express their verdict, their level of appreciation. So the dilemma always is, okay, if they are not laughing right now, is it because they have decided to deliberately shut down, to my message, shut themselves down because they're like, okay, this guy is a right-wing comic, we hate him, and we hate the right-wingers, and so let's not laugh at anything he says? Or is it because, no, the joke is not good enough, because you don't want to blame the audiences for the joke that doesn't work? So that's a good question. Now, sometimes people might be left-leaning, but they might be a bit more open-minded, so they still laugh. Because I watch left-leaning comics. Some of them are my favorite comics, and I laugh at their jokes, or even if I'm not, maybe I don't agree with the premise of the joke or with the angle they're coming from. But if it's funny, it's funny. If it's a good wordplay, if it's a good twist, if it's a good joke, it's funny. So I don't ideologically shut myself down to the joke just because the person is on the other side of the aisle, if you see what I mean. And sometimes you have these open-minded lefties or so-called liberals who are still liberals in the original sense of the term. So they say, you know what, I don't agree with the message, but it was funny, and congratulations for that. And of course, I appreciate it. But then you also have places, maybe university gigs especially, I joke about that too every now and then, that the moment they figure out that you are not standing in their camp, they just want to punish you, and they just want to, cross their arms and look angrily at you, and then as soon as the gig is over, you write a complaint about it or talk to the promoter into banning you from future performances. So you get a mix, really.
Yeah, I think universities are a very different beast, because we could talk forever about universities and the issues that are going on there. But I completely agree. I watch a lot of stand-up comedy as well, and I've seen many bits from left-wing comedians. And as you say, like, if the joke is funny, you might not agree with the premise, but you find it funny, so you laugh. And again, as what you were saying earlier about how it's an immediate reaction. So sometimes, even if you disagree with something, your laughter will just come out naturally anyway, because it's funny. And then so sometimes you'll see in the audience, people will laugh, and then they'll kind of like shake their head as if like, oh, we don't, this wasn't a good, this was naughty, said that. But they laughed because they that was the reaction, because it was funny and they couldn't help it, but they laughed. So that's a great thing. If
there are a lot of...
do that.
Sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, I was just going to say, so if you're able to do that, if you're able to bring laughs from people, and you can kind of almost tell with some of them that they don't agree with you, but they're laughing anyway because they can't help it. It must be a great feeling.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite comics, and I'd call one of my maestros, because I did go to a couple of his workshops as well. His name is Will Franken, and an originally American comic who lives in the UK nowadays, and he's very outspoken. And he was saying that the best laughs is the one or the ones that you sort of get out of them or elicit or extract out of them against their will. Like they've decided that, okay, I'm not going to laugh at this guy, but they can't help it. That's the highest value, obviously. So there's merit and a pleasure to be performing to friendly audiences, to people who like you, who maybe know you from before, and who are very open-minded and open to the message. That's nice, obviously, but it's also nice to perform to a neutral crowd or even partially a hostile crowd and sort of pull it off. But it's a two-way street, because it depends on you and your level of quality, but it also depends on their willingness to give it a go and have an open mind.
Absolutely. Now, I saw in one of your videos on your channel, you mentioned that you were in the USA, and that I think somebody had invited you over there specifically to do a gig. So were you, first of all, surprised to get that invite? And secondly, how was that? How did it go?
It was a lovely experience. I mean, God bless technology, because when you perform in a generally hostile environment, for myself, which is metropolitan London, you have to go out. And today, thanks to YouTube, thanks to social media, people can come to learn about you from all corners of the globe. So thankfully, the television comedy producers are no longer the gatekeepers of who gets famous and who doesn't. Of course, they still exercise a lot of influence, but yeah, technology can help you, raise your own voice and do your own thing and find your own crowd. And this gentleman from Arizona, US, watched one of my videos, or maybe more than one. He liked me. He commented and said, would you like to come and perform at my wedding anniversary party? And it was wonderful, because obviously it was a paid gig. It was my first time performing in the US, my first time in Arizona, in the US. And well, it was a it was a great experience, because while at his party, because obviously he was a fan of mine, he liked my material, and most of his friends were open-minded and like-minded, and they like my material as well. But then I also performed a couple of open mics in Tucson, Arizona, which is pretty much liberal leaning. So it was the opposite crowd. It was very much similar to the London crowd. So I got a mix of reactions and both types of crowds, basically.
Absolutely. Well, he must have really liked your comedy, because I suppose he would have flown you out to the USA and then obviously paid you for the gig. So he was prepared to spend some money on you, wasn't he?
Oh yeah. It was a big party. It was his 25th wedding anniversary. So there was a big party, and before me there was a magician.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, okay, this is an uphill battle, because I have to top I have to follow a magician. How can you follow magic? But it was fun, and of course I felt that it was a great experience. Of course, there was money for it in it, but also when you struggle to find stage time in places like London, because of what we sort of discussed, it's good that you see that people elsewhere in the world can be interested in you. And by the way, maybe I can break the news, if you like, because of this pro-life routine that I did earlier this month. Actually, well, it was published earlier this month, but it was done in January. I got a lot of positive reaction on YouTube, especially. and I've been invited by a pro-life organization in Ohio to perform next month for them in Cincinnati. So we are discussing the details, but they are going to have a big event. This is going to be the anniversary of Roe v. Wade being overturned by the Supreme Court, as I understand. And I've already got an invitation to perform for them as well. This is a major, one of the first pro-life organizations in the U.S. So that's also very flattering.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. And you just touched on this, so I want to kind of go into this a little bit. Nowadays, as you say, with technology, with the internet, with social media, you don't really need, as you said, TV that much. Like before, as you were saying, they were the gatekeepers. Like people were looking to get on TV. That was the way that you get yourself seen. Like you hope someone maybe notices you, and then finally you'll get invited on one of those TV programs where you can, one of those half-an-hour programs where you can be a panelist or something, just something so people can see you. Whereas now, you can just put something on YouTube and get hundreds of thousands of views, as I know that you got for this set you did. And, even if the TV producers, the people who are the gatekeepers there say, you know what, we don't want to bring you on here because we don't like the kind of stuff you're saying, it's not going to necessarily prevent you from succeeding in what you're doing.
That's right. Obviously, TV is still very important. A lot of clubs try to give preference to people who have the so-called TV credit. When the flyers are out, when the gig is advertised, they say, "Oh, as seen on Comedy Central or BBC this or channel for that." It still plays a big part, especially, as I said, for mainstream gigs, because people who go out maybe on a weekend, understandably, maybe they are on a date, so they don't want to have a heavy, if you like, gig for or against abortion or very hard-hitting, controversial political themes. So that's a factor. And of course, when I'm going to find stage time with various clubs, I wouldn't be opening or even proposing my pro-life routine or my pro-Trump routine or this sort of material, because people just want to have a good time, and you need to have broad appeal, so to speak, right? The problem is that these promoters and these mainstream TV channels or platforms play a double standard. So you have lefty comedian after lefty comedian who comes on, who gets even Netflix specials or other long formats, and just badgers the audiences about their white privilege and the gender pay gap and colonialism, and all you guys are so racist, and Brexiteers are so ignorant, and all these repetitive hackneyed talking points, and nobody bats an eyelid, and it's totally fine. So they don't even apply their standards equally on both sides. So TV is a tough gig for people like me, obviously. However, as you said, we have the technology, so you can be successful, and you can become not that I have already, but you can become a phenomenon. You can go viral and carve your own niche and do your own thing, and ultimately, hopefully, the TV, the mainstream will catch up, because if it's all the same, and you go through all these specials, with a few exceptions, they're all giving you the same message, the left-leaning worldview, people are going to get fed up with that at some point. Well, we will see how it goes, but at the end of the day, if a big part of the population feels that they are just being lectured and looked down upon and force-fed lefty propaganda through the comedy, just like through Hollywood and academia and mainstream news, then they're going to look for something else. So I think comics, or any artist who is conservative or Christian or right-leaning, we need to find our own market, and we need to come up with our own even platforms and shows and offer something to the market that is there, but basically to the audiences that are there but don't see what they are looking for in the market. So I hope this is a direction that we are going to, because at the end of the day, a big part of the market is not served by the mainstream comedy.
Exactly. There is certainly a leftist privilege, we could say, in comedy and in the entertainment business generally. So it'd be great if that could be shifted a little bit in future. Nicholas, just on that note, because you mentioned about obviously the struggle in London, because London's quite liberal. I noticed that the place that you did this kind of mostly pro-life set that you did, I think it was called Unleashed Comedy. On their channel, there's actually quite a few comedians who are fairly right-leaning, or let's say at least politically incorrect in some of the things they say. So it seems like they're a bit more tolerant maybe over there, and they're more welcoming to people who are maybe not necessarily leftists. Is that like one place and then the rest of it is really hard, or have you found a few places that are similar to that and they kind of allow for people who are more conservative, more right-leaning? Or is that just one specific kind of golden place that you can go to and say what you want and it's okay, and then the others are all mostly liberal?
Yeah, that's very much true. So this club is called Comedy Unleashed. Shout out to them. These are good guys who set off with a mission to, provide comedy which is not, just left-leaning, open-minded comedy, the way it should be, the way it used to be. So they try to give a platform to all different voices. And if you check my YouTube channel, you see most of my gigs are in fact on their stage. This club, Comedy Unleashed, which is hosted at a backyard comedy club in East London. And it's pretty much, they say the exception that proves the rule. It's almost unique. There's another comedy club which hosts events here and there along and across the UK. They are called Speakeasy Comedy Club, run by a guy who's also a comedian and a bit of a truth warrior, Michael Obernisha. That's called Speakeasy Comedy Club. I've performed with them as well in North London, in Newcastle. But yeah, I struggle to give you other examples. I mean, I do perform here and there every now and then, but it's not very easy to find major clubs, especially who give you a lot of stage time, especially with kind of material that I present.
Yeah.
And well, to be fair, it might be partially because I'm still relatively new to the scene. But of course, being a conservative or having some sort of conservative or Christian / right-wing credentials certainly does not help. It might help elsewhere, as we discussed, that other people here and elsewhere who like your material, invite you. I've done private gigs in London, in Kent. I used to joke about Kent in some of my routines. So that's also good. Sometimes people say, yeah, we like your stuff. Come and do a corporate gig for us, or come and do a gig for our party, and that's always nice. So But the club scene is a bit tricky for people who come up with right wing or conservative routines.
Absolutely. Well, Nicholas, that's all the questions I got for you. Thank you very much for taking some time to chat with me. I will put a link to your channel underneath this video, and also a link to
My
Unleash.
pleasure.
Thank you very much. And yeah, I hope I wish you luck in your comedy career, and I hope that nobody holds you down because of the kind of the ideology that you have in some of your comedy. Hopefully they just look at the talent and look that it's funny, and that'll be enough, and you'll go far.
Thank you so much, Wojciech. Thanks for having me. Great talking to you. Speak soon.
Speak to you soon. Thank you, Nicholas. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.